I don't believe this. Thank you for letting me know, Sean. And I'm so sorry about this. Yeah, so I haven't covered much until now. We just had a round of introduction, and I was just talking about like what to expect. So let me also like repeat what I said already. So I said that this course is more about like the implementation side of things, the practical side of AI and machine learning, and less about the math side. Right, so that's did I forget something? That's mostly what I said, right? And then we were going over like the logistics sides, whether you're able to log into Submiti. There is this syllabus that I've posted under course materials. Please go and have a look. And in addition to that, the course will we will focus more on the AI side of things, that is deep learning as compared to like machine, right? So that's all I said until now. Okay, so then moving forward, in terms of like what all will be due, like the homework policy and other things. So there will be like 4 to 5 homeworks due throughout the semester. And look at these homeworks as like small projects, okay? Wherein you like right from picking the data set until getting the results, it'll be you who will be doing all that, right? So what I'm going to like give you as a homework is, let's say this is the type of problem that I want you to solve, but maybe I won't even give you the data set. So you will be going and finding the data set, and you will also like kind of justify why you're using this data set. And maybe that problem is some, let's say I'm asking you to solve logistic regression, right? So you will go and pick a data set and tell me, why do you think this needs to be solved with logistic regression, right? Because obviously you understand the model, then only you'll decide whether you'll be like solving it with logistic regression or linear regression, and then go from there, right? So these are the kinds of pretty open-ended. That's why I'm calling this course projects, because a lot depends on like what problem you are interested in and you would like to solve using a real world data set. Yes. Yeah, that's a good question. And I want to come to like what I'm expecting in terms of data sets and in terms of like the tools that you should be using. But then I'm not restricting anyone from like getting a data set from somewhere else and working with that as well. So I'll come to the data set part of, and then maybe that'll answer your question. Does that make sense? Any other questions so far? Okay, so homework policy, 4 to 5 homeworks, which are like be like projects. Now, the important point here is that these have to be individual projects, like 4 to 5. But there is this like final project or a final paper wherein you can group together in like groups of 3 to 4, and I'll like post more information about it, but not more than 4. However, you have that option of like doing it alone. Like I'm fine either ways. But this final project, which is like worth 30% of your total grade, can be done in groups, but not more than like 4 people. However, you have that option of like doing it all by yourself. Okay. So as I said, like more information will be coming regarding like what kind of project I'm expecting, and like what the rubric is going to be, and all that. So that is going to come up in a few weeks, not like until a couple of weeks. So that's something that can wait. However, like I will start talking about the homework soon, like from the second lecture onwards. Okay, so that's that. Now there is this like 10% effort, and obviously, like sometimes in class, I'm not able to gauge like who's putting in how much effort. So in addition to these projects, we'll have like the discussion forum on Submiti, where I'll be posting like a question, an open-ended question, wherein you should be posting your response. Like maybe by reading a blog or by reading the papers that I give you, and based on that, you will be like posting your response, or maybe answering somebody's response, or maybe commenting on somebody's response. So that will come towards this like 10%. If that makes sense, right? And so that will be coming like at least every week or every 2 weeks. I will make the announcement when I post a problem or like a question, and then you'll just go in and read through that. Okay, so that's how the homework and the grade is the grade breakup works. Any questions about the grading and other things? Okay, so this is like clear, and then you can definitely ask questions when we go forward, right? Okay, so that's that. Okay, resources, the only resource is Submitty. Now, in addition to that, I have some lecture material that's posted. And what I'm doing is I haven't created a website as such, but rather I'm doing like, if you go to this course home here, right? So I'm posting everything on Git. And I expect everybody to do that as you build your projects. So the way you'll be building your projects is that you need to have your Git, and I'm sure everybody is familiar with that. If not, I can point you to resources where you can learn about Git. Basically, it's like a code sharing, collaborating platform. I know that like most of the projects will be individual, so it doesn't make a lot of sense, but it will make sense like in the sense that like, you have a good Git profile that you've done these projects that are there. Plus, you can share them easily. So that's another reason why we're using Git. And another thing that I wanted everyone to, I don't know how many of you are familiar with Google Colab. Anybody familiar with? You are familiar. If not, that's fine, right? So just go to I'm going to give you the link as well. As we walk through the lecture, I'm going to give you the link. So basically what you can do with Google Colab is that these are like Jupyter notebooks. So you can write your Python code and then publish it on Git. Now the question comes like, let's say you are not using Python for your projects. Let's say you're using R. So I'm fine as long as you're publishing them on Git. I'm okay if you're not using Colab. Let's say you're not familiar with that, you want to work with R. That's absolutely okay. Just publish them on Git, because the way you'll be submitting your homework is that you'll be providing me that link where I'll just go and check your project. Yes. 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 You need to keep them public. Any other questions about like how to submit homeworks? Okay, there is no TA assigned to this course, so I'm the one who's going to like go and check. So that's yeah. No, so on Submitty, let's say I posted homework 1. So you just like post your link. Yeah, just give me the link and I'll just go and check your assignment. Any other questions? Anyone planning to use anything else, like anything apart from Python? Yeah, that's what I like figured. That's why I thought this is going to be easier. And like, I'm going to come to why this is even like easier with most ML and AI projects now. Because with Google Colab, you get so many tools, like most likely you'll be using TensorFlow most of the times as we move on to like implementing neural networks, right? So that's why this is so convenient. You don't have to install anything on your machine. It's just that you can run anything here, right? So it makes our life really easy. So if you're planning to use Python, then this is the place. Just like go to colab.research.google.com. If you have a Google account, just create a new file, and it's more like a Jupyter notebook if you've seen that, right? So the good thing is that like, and I'm going to provide you a template for like initial projects, wherein you will see that like this is what we expect, right? This is how you should do your exploratory data analysis, and this is how you should like use your models and other things. So that's really easy to implement here, because you can just like go and write your text, and then you can write your code and go from there, right? So that's the reason why we are using this. Okay, so there aren't any questions about the like anything else. Let's begin. And today's lecture is just about like introduction to machine learning in general, things that you already know probably. But I just wanted to take like the first day easy, not too much, but because the rest of the lectures will go really fast. As you can see, like these topics are vast. So you'll have a lot of information. Good thing is you don't have to remember this information. You just have to go and apply it. And so you can refer back to it and just like apply it to your project. So that's the important thing there. Yes. Yes, this is available to you. So if you go back to Submitty, right, and you go to course home, you come to my repo, right? So let's say you open lecture 1, you can open it in like Google Colab as well, right? You can just like click on this. This is public. You can access this material. And yes. On Submitty, when did you register? Can other students see? Because this happens if you registered like in the last 48 hours. Do one thing. Can you like send me an email about it so that I can take your RCS and add you like manually? Yeah. Anyone else who cannot see the course? Okay. You can directly go to my Git, and if at all you're interested. Yeah. Because I'll be posting everything here. So that's that. What else? Let's start with the lecture material, and then we can take questions as well. So first of all, there was this question asked a couple of days ago whether attendance is required or not. So no, I don't require attendance. I will anyways be like broadcasting this on WebEx. If you're comfortable doing it online, I'm fine with that. I'm not taking attendance. And as I said, there is a lot of material that's like compressed in this course. So I don't expect you to remember everything, right? As long as you understand whatever you understand and apply it to some real world data set, I'm good with that. And mostly that's how we're going to proceed. Okay. All right. So I think I already talked about many of these points. So I already talked about syllabus, learning outcomes, grading. The emphasis, as I said, is on practical application, right? Okay, in addition to all of this, I will have some readings assigned, like research papers that are relevant to that topic. So let's say today we are going to talk about linear regression and logistic regression. I have two papers that talk about how should we actually be doing, like from the research standpoint, how should we be doing logistic regression? So that's something that you'll be reading today. And then I'll post a question either related to that or related to the topic, right? And then that goes into the discussion forum. So that's that. And then, yeah, I did talk about like prerequisites if you've done intro to algorithms, some part of linear algebra and probability theory. I'm guessing you should be okay because when we start talking about deep learning, right, you do need to understand like some things that we cannot just like eliminate. That's important. When we talk about those algorithms, you need to understand some of that. So that's that. Okay, so the material is derived from mostly from this book. This is the Neural Network and Deep Learning, Charu Agarwal, but I would say loosely derived from this. You don't have to buy that material. I'll be providing most of it. I'll be providing links to certain articles, certain papers, so you don't have to buy anything. You don't have to buy that book, but just in case you wanted to know where the material is derived from. And then there is this like online dive into deep learning. Some of the material comes from there as well, but mostly from the first one. Okay. I think I talked about this, except my office hours, I have Thursday 1 to 2. My office hours are going to be online. So you just join my WebEx. But we can like meet if that time doesn't work for you, just like send me an email. We can set up some other time as well. Okay. Okay, homeworks usually will be due on Fridays. I'll come with more information about homeworks, as I said. Right, so let's move on. Talked about discussion forum. All right, so let's actually begin with what is machine learning. And do you have like any, like, what is your idea of like, what do you think when you're coming to this class? What is machine learning according to you? Any like vague, I'm not looking for like a perfect definition, like any idea that you have, like what is machine learning? Yes. Yes, that's one. Excellent. So I would like agree to you. It's actually statistical learning. It's just that we have more data now. And so so we have to add to that, like how to, like what are the efficient algorithms to work with more data given these statistical algorithms. And so we build on that, and that's what machine learning is right now. And then we have even more data now. So that's why artificial intelligence comes in, right? And we have the ability to process that data now. That's even better news, right? So I agree with you. It's like, it's nothing but those basic statistical models, just that now we have 100 or like, I don't know, million times more data than we used to have when we had statistics. So yeah, machine learning is what we just said it is. And machine learning algorithm is the process that uncovers the underlying relationship within data. What does that mean? So well, think of this as like you have this like humongous amount of data, and you're getting some result because of some things, some inputs, you're getting an output, right? So there is this underlying function. And we as people who are using these machine learning algorithms are trying to uncover or at least trying to come to like close to that function, right? There is this function that is relating this input to your output. And you're trying to find that function using data. And that's like the best way out. Like that's the best way of thinking about machine learning, right? There exists some ground truth, some ground reality, and we are trying to uncover that using data. Okay. So of course, like the outcome of a machine learning algorithm is called machine learning model. This is important because many times you're reading papers, you'll come across these terms, right? So do not get overwhelmed, do not get confused by like what exactly are they talking about. This is what they're talking about, right? And as I said, consider as a function, output certain results, given an input, right? Okay, so obviously we don't have a predefined fixed function. It depends on the data we have. And based on that, we get the output, right? Okay, so what are the types of, so there is a clear, I would say, demarcation, or there is this like clear definition of different types of machine learning problems. And I'm sure you must have come across these terms. So supervised learning, unsupervised learning, reinforcement learning, right? These are the three major paradigms, I would say. And there are like many other ways of categorizing machine learning algorithms. There are many ways, but these are the most common. Anybody familiar with like supervised learning? What exactly is supervised learning doing? Yes? Exactly. Yes. So we already have the answer to the problem we are looking at in terms of the historical data, as you rightly said. And so we're utilizing that. I already have the labels, as we call them. I already have the answer to a certain question. I'm utilizing that to uncover certain parameters and utilizing them for the unknown data, right? So I already have answers. And some of the examples of supervised learning are regression problems, classification problems. We are going to talk about them in detail today. Okay. And then there is this like unsupervised learning, which is more like you don't have these labels, right? You don't have answers to any questions, but you just have this data. So what you do is you try to find some patterns in that data. For example, maybe some clusters that exist, right? And so one, like a new data point maybe belongs to this cluster versus the other one. Or maybe some other patterns that exist that let me uncover certain um, answers to a particular problem that I'm trying to solve. Right, so that's what unsupervised learning, and we're going to look at some examples today that as well. And then a very new paradigm is reinforcement learning. So reinforcement learning is slightly different from these two because here we have this agent-based model that kind of learns from its environment, and then there is a penalty that's applied. So you either get a penalty if you do something wrong, otherwise you get like a reward. So based on that reward and penalty system, your algorithm learns and then improves. Right? So it's like totally different from what we've been doing until now. And that is also something that we are going to cover in this course. And most likely you'll be implementing some of that. Okay, so those are the three things that we will cover high level in the course. Okay, so what is AI then? Like, I know this is machine learning, right? So what is artificial intelligence? I've provided a link, which is a nice article that you should like go over, which kind of gives a relationship between machine learning, AI, and then deep learning, right? And I would like to begin with this picture. I know this is like a very poor quality. I picked it up from in the internet, but this just kind of shows why we are interested in this course at all right now, right? AI is there, like it's impacting our lives through everything, and you just like know that through smartphones, through surveillance, social media, e-commerce, banking, like fintech is a big thing, right? And smart homes, autonomous vehicles, and all of that. So like AI is everywhere. There is no way you can ignore it. So let's like dive deeper into that and try to like maybe solve some of these problems, right? So that's why we are here, first of all. Okay. The other thing was the relationship between like machine learning. And this is a very nice article that talks about like what exactly is the difference between AI, machine learning, deep learning, because now we've been using like these terms like interchangeably, right? So this kind of gives a very good idea of what we are talking about here. If you look at like machine learning is nothing but a subset of like AI, right? Because AI is like mimicking human intelligence using logic, decision trees, like everything is AI, right? And then you have machine learning, which is a subset of these techniques, right? And deep learning is a very specific subset of machine learning. So I would like recommend everybody to go through this article that gives a high level idea of like where we lie in terms of like whenever we are implementing an ML algorithm. However, for this like course, this is where we'll be focusing mostly on, right? So this is the area that we will focus on, that's deep learning, okay? So that's why and I'll be giving links throughout to such articles and papers that you can go over and read to get more information. Uh, just because think about this, there I personally feel there cannot be a textbook at this time and age that can teach machine learning and AI. There is so much out there, and this field is changing every day. So the best we can do is maybe keep track of the latest research trends and then learn from them. So most likely you will be creating a project or implementing something that I'm not aware of, I'm not familiar with, and I learn from you. So that's my hope, most likely, right? So that's that. And yeah, it's almost impossible that everybody knows everything. As I said, personally speaking, I've been working on a pretty small area of AI that's recommender systems. Of course, I've done enough in that area, but other fields I'm also exploring, right? So maybe we'll learn together. All right. Yes, so I think we already talked about resources in today's lecture. The next thing I'm going to talk about is grouping of machine learning algorithms. This is important because I've seen different books and different articles talk about machine learning in a different light or different perspective. And so that's why I just wanted to let you know that there can be different groupings, and you might or might not know all of them, but that's fine. As long as you understand one out of the larger group, I think you're fine, given that you understand the basic, the basic idea behind that algorithm, right? So that's why this is important to understand the grouping of machine learning algorithms. And then we'll talk about the linear model and how the linear model is applied to regression and classification type problems. And I would like to focus on the gradient descent algorithm. Why? Because this is going to play an extremely important role when we start talking about neural networks and deep learning, right? So that's why we'll focus more on that. Okay. So I have listed resources for your project. So as I said, use Jupyter Notebooks. If possible, use Google Colab so you don't have to install anything. And we have a lot of resources like TensorFlow easily available. You'll be working with GPUs. We'll come to that, what GPUs are. And so it's really easy. So go there, create a Google account, and we'll get started from there. I think I already talked about all of this. So okay. Coming to the data for your project, I have listed 3 links here. The first one is Kaggle. Everybody is familiar with, most likely with Kaggle, right? So you have publicly available data sets there. That's one. The other is this data.gov. I don't know if you're familiar with that, if you've ever seen that before in your other courses or otherwise. So you have publicly available data sets released by the government in different fields. And let's say you want to solve, so exploring each, the 3 of these, this is the UCI, famous UCI dataset repo. If you just go and explore these 3, this might be helpful because maybe you're trying to solve, let's say, a problem in a particular field. You want that problem is important to you and you want to solve that problem in that field. So just doing some research on what all types of data sets are available on each of these would make a lot of sense, right? So as I said earlier, I will be asking you to go and explore these, pick some data set that's important, that's relevant to the problem that you're trying to solve, and then we'll go from there. So these are the 3 resources. However, the choice of your data set is not limited to this. As long as you're able to tell me that this is a publicly available data set and what is the source of this, that's fine. If you can find some other data sources, that's also okay. Okay, questions, doubts about this? Anything? All right. Okay, people who are online, do you have any questions? I'm sorry, this is, I'm sorry, I totally forgot to ask. Okay, thank you, Felix. Okay, excellent. No questions so far, so that's good. All right, so I'm beginning with how do we group machine learning algorithms in general, and then based on that, sometimes this grouping is helpful when you're trying to solve a particular problem, right? And so that's why it's important to understand this and then go from here. And I'm not going to go into a lot of detail of this because I know that most of us are familiar with most of them. But just as a starting point, I just feel that it's important to keep things in perspective, right? So as I said, there are 3 important paradigms of learning. If you remember those 3, that's enough, that's sufficient. Regardless, there is like this different grouping that's available. The first one is grouping by style, which means how are we learning from the given data. And so based on that style, you have supervised learning algorithms, unsupervised, and semi-supervised. So there is no need to get like confused with the names. Semi-supervised is something where you have some labeled examples, or you gather some information from some other source that gives you that information, and then you learn from there, right? So maybe you have some information about the output, but not everything. So you don't have like clearly defined label. So that's what semi-supervised is. And then I think we understand what unsupervised and supervised is. So I'm not going to go into that, right? Okay. Another important one, I think there should be like fourth by style, is reinforcement learning. And I would recommend everybody to go and read this link that talks about reinforcement learning, right? So this is a very good article about reinforcement learning. It's in reinforcement learning, you're actually making a sequence of decisions, right? So there is an agent and there is this environment that you have to set up. So that simulation environment is really important when we are looking at reinforcement learning. Of course, when you implement it, you'll understand better, which is I'm not like giving you all this like Oracle type information and I'm just like standing here and like throwing that information on you. I know that when you implement that, that's the best way to like understand these algorithms. Okay, so as I said, please go and read this article. This will give you a good idea of like what reinforcement learning actually is. Okay, and then machine learning algorithms group by similarity. So I would say each of these like algorithms that I've listed here, they are a part of either supervised, unsupervised, semi-supervised, or reinforcement learning, right? So they overlap, but there are just like two ways of grouping them. That's what we're talking about here. All right, so the first one is regression algorithms. This is something that you are going to deal with a lot, right? So this is going to come up again and again. Linear regression, where you have a linear model, you learn the unknown parameters, and then use that for prediction, right? So we are going to cover that today. Linear regression and logistic regression is something that we will cover today. And then in addition to that, there is this stepwise regression. Sometimes, as we'll see, you have these features, and I'm going to define what features are, but like input variables, right? And some of them are very similar to each other. That means they carry the same information that some other variable carries, right? So you don't want all of them in your model. So there are ways of dealing with that issue, right? Like if you have like too many parameters or too many inputs, you want to deal with that in a certain statistical way, right? So there is this like stepwise regression where you have certain statistical techniques, like you are checking the R squared and seeing how much variability in the output is caused due to this variable. And if it's not a lot, you can just remove it, right? So there's like some elimination methods, and then stepwise regression is one of them. So again, building on the basic regression model. That's that. And then instance-based algorithms, like you have some examples, some instances, and you're using those examples to answer some other unknown problems. Right, so clustering-based techniques, or techniques like I would say where you do dimensionality reduction, like or like more robust techniques like support vector machines. I think all of them come in here in that group. One of the important ones is I would say k nearest neighbor. So a very easy way of thinking about this algorithm is that you have a given point and you're finding the distance of that point to other points in the data and see which ones are the closest or the nearest. And then you're like labeling that according to that. So it's like a very, I would say, naive way of classifying things, but yeah, it is like an instance-based algorithm. Okay, regularization algorithms. Again, these are not separate from the linear model that I talked about. So we will see that there are certain issues with the linear model. And in order to deal with those issues, like one of the important problems, one of the very important problems in machine learning is of overfitting, right? So to deal with overfitting, we have a regularization-based techniques. So these just like build on my linear model. Again, we'll have plenty of time to go over this, like how to do regularization, why we need regularization, because overfitting is a curse in machine learning, as many of you might know, right? So that's regularization, and in particular, we use ridge regression and lasso a lot. And these are like two different forms of using regularization algorithms. Next week, we'll be covering decision trees. So I'm not going to go into a lot of details, but this is more like creating this is a tree-based methods where we are making decisions like by splitting the feature space based on like certain criteria, right? So there are like these statistical values that exist that based on that you can like split the data set and then go from there. So like create a tree-like structure, right? So as I said, let's keep it for next week because we'll talk a lot about decision trees next week. Okay, then there are clustering algorithms. Again, there are different ways of clustering data, and you're trying to find patterns. Mostly in unsupervised scenario where you don't have like an answer to a problem. So you're just trying to cluster, you're trying to find patterns, right? Okay, then comes the important part, which we are going to focus on. So this is like point 6 and 7. This is something that we're going to focus on throughout the course. So the first one is artificial neural networks. And we will begin with the perceptron, which is like the most basic building block of a neural network. And we will see how that is borrowed from the linear model. That is nothing but a linear model, just that like, think of it as a cascading linear model, right? A linear model, multiple linear models put together one over the other. And that's what a neural network is. So we will begin with a perceptron, the MLP, which is the multi-layered perceptron. And this is like an important algorithm using which you learn a neural network, right? And then how stochastic gradient descent works. Maybe if you have time, I will cover radial basis functions, most likely not Hopfield networks, but I will definitely try to cover this because this is an important addition to the list we have. Okay, so finally, deep learning algorithms. Like, what is the difference between the existing neural networks and these like deep learning networks? It's just that like we have more ability, we have greater power, we have more efficient ways of like working with bigger, larger data sets and building these deep networks that can learn better and that work really well in certain scenarios, right? So that's why we are so much interested in deep learning algorithms, specifically convolution neural networks for image processing, image recognition, those type of tasks. And then we have recurrent neural networks. I would say this is like the perfect way, like a very good way of like solving speech recognition, natural language processing type problems. So that's like recurrent neural networks. And LSTMs actually are a part of recurrent neural networks. It's just that we improvise on recurrent neural networks using LSTMs. So again, if you're getting like super overwhelmed with all those terms, I know like the first lecture is meant to be like a little boring, but that's fine, I'm guessing. But yeah, we will be doing all of that. So then you will understand how to use LSTMs. Boltzmann machines, I will definitely cover. I'm not sure if we are going to go into deep learning networks, but if we have time, we may. Okay, let me just like stop for a minute because I think I gave you a lot of information. And if you are not able to remember that, that's fine. But any questions, anything, any point that you wanted to add here? Okay, that's fine because this is just like, yeah. Thank you, Mike. I hope I'm recording this. Yeah, okay, good. Okay, so let's begin with the most basic machine learning model, that is the linear model, right? So what do you understand by a linear model? When I say a linear model, what comes to your mind? What do you think a linear model is? What is like a linear function? Like if you think about what is a linear, yes. Yeah, so it's like a linear relationship between the input and the output. That's precisely what the linear model in machine learning does, right? So first of all, there are two different problems that we try to solve using a linear model. So the first one is the regression type problems. Problems where the output is a continuous value. For example, let's say I'm trying to predict housing prices, right? That's the most like classic example of a regression type problem. So in housing prices, I have like, let's say the age of the house, the square footage, I don't know, and then the price maybe, and all of those variables will impact the house price, right? And obviously I'll have historical data. I'll have some data from previous housing sale, and I'm going to utilize that to predict for an unknown or a new house, right? So that value is going to be a price, which is a continuous value, right? So that is what a regression problem is. When you're trying to predict something that is like a real value, like a real value number or something like that, right? However, you have problems where the outcome is categorical, and specifically for like outcomes where you have things like yes or no, this is given an email, whether this is a spam or not, right? Or I don't know, if given some data, whether like this new patient, what is the probability of this new patient having heart problem or not, right? So those kind of problems have like a binary type of an outcome. Or even for the multinomial logic model, you have more than one outcome, but those are categorical outputs, right? So you're trying to predict the probability of something, right? So in those cases, that's the classification problem. You're trying to classify like a new data point into like yes or no, or like certain categories, right? So those are the two fundamental problems that we'll be solving throughout. First one is the regression type problems. Second one is the classification problem, right? So obviously, when we're talking about the linear model, we begin with linear regression. I'm sure you've come across this multiple times in other math courses and other classes, but it's important to like reiterate it, especially in terms of notation, right? So like I'm focusing more on notation here because I'm going to stick to that notation throughout. So let's like revisit linear regression. I know like everybody's familiar with it, but still let's do it, right? So as you said, linear regression is like you assume that there is this linear relationship between input and output, right? And what is the output? Well, the output is sometimes, so the input are the independent variables. Those are known as independent variables in the language of machine learning. And we denote them by X, right? So that's that. And then there is this dependent variable Y, right? So Y is the output. The price of a given house is my Y, right? So I'm going to denote it by Y throughout. So whenever I'm talking about Y, that's the output. Whenever I'm talking about input, that's X, right? Okay. Now I know that there is a linear relationship between my independent variable and my dependent variable, right? So I can denote this dependent variable in terms of my X in some way, right? And that way I figured is a linear function. And so that's why what I do is I come up with like an equation like this, right? So before we jump into this equation, let me quickly go over some of the notation. And again, we're looking at predicting house prices based on just like two variables, right? So this is the problem. I'm just taking a very simple housing prices example, right? Where I'm just like looking at two features, that's area and age. Age of the house, area of the house, right? Now, in the language of machine learning, the data set is called training data. So whenever I'm talking about training data or training set, basically I'm talking about my historical data, the data set that you're using, right? And we will talk about like how do we deal with issues like, let's say you don't have like a test set available. I'm going to talk about that later, but right now, whenever I'm talking about the data set, it's the training data, okay? So that's that. And then the value that I'm trying to predict, because there is going to be some unknown house whose value I'm trying to predict, right? So that value will be called like the target. So in my training, I will have the target, right? Because I have historical data, and those are known as labels. So just like remember this notation or these like this terminology. So that is going to be my label. So whenever I'm saying labels and my training data, it's essentially the Ys that I already have, right, in my data set. Okay. Sometimes these like input variables are also known as covariates or features. And especially like in many of the research papers, you will see like they call them covariates or features. So just like do not get confused. They are talking about X, right? Okay, so obviously you have this data set, so you'll have n observations. Let's say you'll have n observations, right? And each of those will be denoted by like this. Okay, so just remember, because I'm going to like stick to this notation throughout. So the ith example, so what is an example? Let me just like write it down so that, I don't know if I have space here. Yeah. So let's say I have like this set of observations, right? So I have like feature one, feature two, and then the Y value, right? So I have like X1, which is let's say the age, right? And then I have X2, right? Which is the I think we talked about price or area. Okay, thank you. So area and age, right? And then you have like the prices for each of these houses, right? So you'll have like these n observations, right? So I'm calling these as observations. So every row is an observation or an example, right? Or an instance. So all those three terms are used interchangeably. And each of these is like, so this is the first observation, this is the second observation. So in general, I'll be like calling them like the ith observation. So whenever I'm talking about like one example, that's the ith observation, right? So that's what we are looking at here. Here. So my input will be denoted like this, right? And the corresponding label will be yi because this is the ith one, right? Okay. So now what is my linear model? My linear model is given by this, which means that there is this assumption that there is a linear relationship between the output, which is my price, and these input values, that's the area and my age of the house, right? So notice like this is all that is to like linear model. This is my model, right? My price is some input parameter, some weight, which I don't know what that weight is, right? And some weight for the other feature, right? Again, I don't know what that is, and some bias, right? Because obviously I cannot like somehow prove that this price is actually equal to area plus age plus something. But I know that there is that something that exists, right? And me, like as a person who's trying to solve this problem, my goal is to find out this weight using the given data, using the historical data that I have, right? So this makes sense to everyone, right? So this is the linear model. That's all that is there to the linear model. And then we have ways to find out these weights, right? Because all I'm saying here is that my label, my price, is a weighted average of my features plus some bias, right? And using my data, I'm going to learn those parameters because those are unknown, right? Okay, so because this is a regression type problem, I have to come up, like let's say somebody gives me a new house with an area and age. I have to predict this price based on like whatever I have here. So basically, I would have learned these weights from my given data, and I would apply that to the new house. That's how this entire process works. Okay. So here again, in terms of like notation, what I'll be doing is for a more generic case, let's say I have D features, not just these two, not just the area and the age. I have like other features as well for my like housing prices, right? So this is the generic equation. And notice this like y hat. So again, in terms of notation, whenever you see the hat symbol, that kind of tells me that that's the predicted value. That's what I'm going to predict. That's what will be the estimated value, right? So whenever you see the hat, just like know that that's the estimated value of my y. And in vector notation, I'm going to write like more concisely, which is like this W transpose X is essentially referring to this part, right? Plus the bias. So this is a very concise way of writing this. And this is my predicted value with like these weights being learned from my data. And this is my linear model. That's it. There is an alternate way of writing this because I know that there are n values, right? I have n observations, not just one. So another like more concise way of writing this in vector notation is like this. But we can use either of them interchangeably, that's fine, right? And as I said, we are not focusing too much on the math side of things, but this is important to know because you will be visualizing that data and utilizing that, right? To answer certain questions. So that this is important that you understand this is the linear model. Okay, any questions, doubts about this before we move on? This is pretty straightforward. Like I'm sure you've seen this like multiple times, but still I want to reiterate this so that like we are on the same page in terms of like notation. Okay, so what is our goal in this like linear model? What is my goal when I look at like this is my linear model? Yes. Excellent. Yes. So my goal is going to be that I have some historical data. I have answers to certain questions, and then my algorithm is going to predict some, right? And so my goal is going to be to minimize that difference that my algorithm is getting versus the actual, right? And so I'm not done there yet because my algorithm can predict anything. So there has to be a good way of like quantifying whether my algorithm has predicted something good or not, because otherwise it doesn't make sense. I can just like go ahead, pick any W and any B and just say this is it, right? So there has to be some way of measuring that. And that I think is the most fundamental part of any machine learning model. The metric that you use to quantify how good your machine learning algorithm is. And in all of your homework projects, that is going to be something that I'm going to look for. Like, what is that metric that you've used and why you've used it for that problem? Because I think it's there in the research community as well. If you've been reading papers, that the metric is like really important, and it changes with the type of problem that you're solving. As we'll see, like there is a different metric for a linear model versus like a logistic regression classification model. All right. So going back to what you said, we need a quality measure of some whatever model we have, right? And then a procedure for updating the model to improve the quality. So that means there has to be some algorithm that is going to get me the best, right? And then that is mostly an optimization algorithm. In most of the cases, it's the gradient descent. Like I'm sure you're familiar with that. For all convex optimization problems, that is the best available algorithm. So this is something that you should remember and maybe underline, that you need a quality measure for your given model, right? And you need a procedure to find that optimal value. Okay, so how do we do that with a linear model? Well, so there is this another term that we will be using throughout, the loss function. So this is important. This is the measure, this is the metric that we are going to utilize to see whether how good my algorithm is. Okay. All right, so coming to the loss function, in any ML problem, as we just said, there is a target value and then there's a predicted value because I predicted something, right? So the loss function is going to help us quantify that difference. Now, if you think about this like housing prices, let's say the house price of a certain house was like, let's say 100,000, right? And then my algorithm predicted 150, right? And so depending on the difference, right, I'm going to see how good my algorithm has done, right? So the difference is important because, of course, I predicted a certain price, but the actual price was like way off in this case, right? And let's say if your algorithm came really close to that 100,000, then your algorithm did really good. So the way to quantify that is using a loss function. So a loss function is defined as, and this is just like a squared error. You've seen this like since forever, I would say, except that like we are using it for the entire data set now. So what we do is, and this is something that I would like everybody to pay attention to. So the loss function by definition is for one observation, for one example. So for example, here I'm calculating, so this is the loss, L sub I, superscript I, and then it's a function of weights and my bias, right? And it's like the squared difference between the predicted and the actual. And we usually take the average of that. So we usually divide it by this like constant half. That's the convention because of a lot of like mathematical convenience, as you'll see going forward. So now when I'm talking about loss function, I'm usually talking about a single example. However, I'm interested in finding the loss function for every observation in my data set, right? So that is known as the cost function. So there's a subtle like difference. And if you have like n examples, for example, here, your cost function is going to be the sum of this like loss, right? And the average of that loss. So it's like 1 over n and the summation of the loss that you just calculated. This is something that I want everybody to remember because these terms actually appear in a lot of research papers you will see. And so sometimes it's confusing what is loss versus what is cost. And so this is what it is in most of the data. Questions? Anything that you wanted to ask before we move on? People who are online? Okay, I don't see any new questions, so I think we are okay. What we can do is we can take a 5 minutes break, I think, because I think we have like a 2-hour session. So let's take a 5 minutes break because I know I've given you a lot of information and it is like overwhelming. So let's take a 5 minutes break and then we can start like at 1. Okay. Are you guys having other classes as well, like in person or just this one? For personal in person? Okay, Mike, you have a question, and so I'll just like repeat it for everyone. Mike is online. So you haven't seen this notation before. So this, if you haven't seen this notation before, did you take any linear algebra class at all? Because I'm sure you must have seen that there. And I think that's like a kind of a prerequisite for this class. Yeah, so this is like the vector notation, like I'm putting all features together in this space, and that's what this W transpose X means. I think this is a pretty standard notation in most of the machine learning literature and linear algebra literature, but we can talk about it like after classes if you're not comfortable with this. Yes.
I'm taking linear algebra right now. Do you think I've got any shot in this class?
Yes, you have. See, like in terms of notation, as I said earlier, like you won't be doing the mathematical part, but of course it comes in when you'll be implementing this. So for example, I'll just like give you a hint. The first homework that's coming up, I'll ask you to implement logistic regression, right? So if you understand what I'm doing with the data here, it will be easier for you to implement that there. However, like it has become really easy with TensorFlow and other packages in Python. You don't have to like manually do anything. You just like call a method for this. So for example, like this W transpose X is nothing but a dot product, right? So you're going to call a method which will just do that. And I'll cover some part of that on Friday's lecture. So although I won't be doing a lot of like technical stuff in class because I'll be covering the theory side, but I still decided to just like give you an overview of like where to find things when you are doing your own project. And so one of them is like how to use TensorFlow, and you will see there are things that are so easy like in there. So I don't think it's going to be an issue if you don't really understand each and every mathematical part of this.
What extent will be out there things like the TensorFlow has a built-in logistic regression and just using their
Yes, you will be using that. Yeah, because as I said, like the focus of this class is less of like logistic regression and linear. It's just to get you started. But we'll be doing like convolution neural networks, recurrent neural networks. So there you'll have to write more than just like one line. And you will have to do a lot of other things in addition to just like implementing the model. So yeah, you will be using the built-in functions, but I will make sure that you understand that before like implementing. But yeah, like going back to that question about math, so you won't be like answering math related stuff. I will cover that in class in like in lecture. But as long as you understand that, I won't ask you to prove anything, or I won't ask you to. I will just ask you to implement it and get results. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. This is a typo. This is a typo. Yeah, it is the exact same thing. Yeah, no, I noticed it as well. I thought I'll like after class I'm going to update it. Yeah, well, that's a good catch. That's fine. Yeah, that is absolutely fine. Because PyTorch like indirectly has most of the packages that TensorFlow is using, so that's fine. Which is why I'm not like going back to that question, which is why I'm not covering a lot of like the technical aspect, because I just like want to give you the freedom to go and like work with what you're more comfortable with. Regardless, I wanted to talk about a little bit of like vectorization and broadcasting and things like that, because I know and I encountered that in the course that I was teaching machine learning from data, wherein you start writing a loop, for example, for a bigger data set, and that's not the way to work with that data set, right? Because that will run forever. So there are techniques to deal with that. Like let's say you have a huge matrix of some data. How do you do the multiplications? How do you do, like, for example, the dot product, right? So those things, there are certain tricks that I can show you in class, but that's all I can do. Like beyond that, you will have to go and find out these things, right? Because the focus of this course should be that I'm introducing some new algorithm and then you go and implement that. And if you run into issues, of course, you can come back and we can solve that together. So that's all right. Any other questions before we start? Okay, that's fine. So going back to the cost function, as I said, the cost function is simply the average of the loss for every observation or every example, right? And then obviously we have to figure out the best W and the best B, right? That's my goal, because that has to be like based on the data that I have to come up with the best value for my weights and the best value for my bias. And the way I do that is that I solve an optimization problem to find those parameters. So when I'm doing a W star and a B star, that means this is the best that I found, right? So the star means the optimum, right? And the way I'm going to find that is that I'm going to minimize my cost. That's my optimization problem, that I have to minimize that cost and get the best values for my parameters. It's as simple as that. Now, the good news about this optimization problem, no matter how hard it sounds, is that if you're doing it for like linear regression, we have like the exact analytical solution available for that. So that's good news. There is something that's known as a pseudo inverse algorithm, using which you can actually solve for that value, right? So I'm not again going into a lot of detail. You have like this thing to minimize, and you can minimize that because the surface on the error surface is easy to solve for, and you get the exact W's and the B's. That's for regression, that linear regression. But that's it. After that, you will face a lot of issues for solving that optimization problem. So the good news ends here, right, for the linear model. And then we jump into logistic regression. So remember I said logistic regression is again, if like I have to define logistic regression, it is a linear model because I take the linear input. I again assume that the target and the input are linearly related. However, my prediction task is different in logistic regression. It's like a classification task. For example, you have to predict yes or no, spam or ham, 0 or 1. It's that kind of a problem. So you have like these categorical outputs, right? So of course, you can use the same data that you have, right? And utilize that to predict this yes or no, right? But you have to do some updates to your linear model. So again, I'm assuming that my Y is linearly related to the inputs. But in addition to that, I'm going to pass it through an activation. Okay, so why is that, right? So let's look at that. So we like activation is like another layer that you add to your input, right? Let me show you why we do that. So now in logistic regression, I'm interested in predicting yes or no, right? Whether this email is a spam or not, right? So maybe somewhere predicting the probability of this email being a spam helps. Because let's say the probability was found to be 0.5 and above, then I'll say, yes, this is spam. If it's 0.5 or below, like not 0.5, but below 0.5, then I'll say, no, it's not spam, right? So I need an additional function using which I can like get to that decision. And so that for that, what we use is known as the sigmoid function. And I have like this picture here. I'm sure you've seen this before, but I still wanted to have this here. So this is what a sigmoid function looks like. So it actually solves a lot of our problem here, because if you can see on the bottom, okay, let me just, okay. So this is like on the bottom, this T is your input function. So think of this as, okay, let me write it down. Think of this T as our linear input, right? So let's say this T was, what do we have? Area times the weight of the area, right? Plus age times the weight of age plus B, right? It could be that linear signal again. But in addition to what I was doing for the regression problem, I'm using a sigmoid function over this. So basically, this is what I'm doing. I'm saying 1 over 1 plus e to the minus t, because this is how the sigmoid is defined. And why is this helpful? This is helpful because I can restrict my output. So this is my output. Look at this red curve. I'm restricting my output within this like 0, 1 range, right? And mapping this linear signal to that 0, 1 range. So how is that helping? Let's say my t value came out somewhere here, right? 4. So I can map it to like this, right? So maybe the probability of like if the linear signal gave me this value, then if I mapped it to the sigmoid, maybe the probability of getting that value is somewhere here, which is like 0.9 or something, right? Similarly, if I got like the real value that I get from my t somewhere here, then I can map it here. And so maybe I'll say, yeah, it's just like at the borderline of getting to this, right? So this is the first activation. There is a reason I'm calling it activation, because we will use that term a lot, right? So this is the first activation function we are looking at, which means that I can put or I can convert my input to a certain desirable output, right? And we do that a lot in neural networks. So there we'll use the activation function a lot, and there are different types of activation functions, and we'll see why we need different types of activation functions, right? But for now, it's enough to know that in logistic regression, the sigmoid function is the activation function that we use. Because if you think like even from a mathematical standpoint, I still have the same information. It's just that I'm like transforming that information to a probability value, because the probability value has to be between 0 and 1. Right? So does that make sense to everyone? This is what logistic regression is. Okay, so all of that is excellent. That's good. Okay, so for some reason, I don't know why I'm not able to embed like a picture in Colab, although other people are able to do that. So like this is giving me error, and so that's why I have like this link, which is weird. Anyways, coming back to this predicted value, right? So y hat, remember, y hat is sigma over like this W transpose X plus B, just what we saw, right? So it's the same thing here. And you know the sigma Z is given by this. Just like instead of T, I have this Z. And mostly I will be using Z in my notes. So it's totally up to you which one do you want to stick to. Okay, so the real problem with logistic regression comes in when we are trying to find the loss for logistic regression. Right? Now just think about it. What is like logistic regression? What is logistic regression trying to predict? Well, I have a 0 and a 1 as an outcome. So my actual y's are zeros and ones, right? And then the predicted values are those probability values, right? So first of all, if you look at the square difference between them, it's going to be anyways very small and not significant enough to get the optimal. That's first. And then also think about if we are using that half of y hat minus y squared, right? Think about the error function that I'm going to get, right? So that's why I left that out for you, like to think about. One quick hint is that it's not going to be convex. Okay, so if that is like making you super confused, usually like we use like whatever the optimization algorithms we have, right, work really well if you have like a convex function, because you can find some optimal, and that's your optimal, right? However, in case of like this logistic regression, you have like these predicted values are actually the probability values, right? So it's like probability of getting this like yi or whatever. It's not really like it's not really a real valued value, just to say, right? So if I'm doing something like this, right, of like y predicted minus actual y, and I'm just like getting rid of i's just to make it easier. So this is not going to be a convex function, and so we cannot like apply all our like known algorithms, and so we don't use this loss. This does not make sense for a problem for a binary classification type output, right? So what do we do then, right? So there is something that's known as, sometimes we call it log loss function, or sometimes known as the cross entropy error function, and that is given here. So this is the loss that we use. And why do we do that? Okay, so just take some time to understand why we are using this loss, and I will write down why we're using it. And maybe I can give you an intuition, because this is not the exact derivation for this one, but I'll give you an intuition of why we are using it, right? So this is my loss for I, right? And then this is my cost for all the i's. I get the average, right? Now let's look at like one observation here. Let's look at this one, right? So what happens if my y is 1, right? Let's look at this. If y is 1, and by y I mean like yi, right? So let's see what happens if y is 1. So if y is 1, this term is going to be 0, right? The second one, right? And so we are left just with this part, right? And I am doing yi log yi hat, right? And log of 1. So when I'm like getting, I don't know how to say this. So like if you just think about this like this is going to be 1, right? This thing is going to be 1. So I'm just like left with minus log y I hat, right? So if my y is 1, then this should be as small as possible. This should be like as small as it can get, right? And so that means like if this y should be as small as possible, that means like this if minus log y has to be as small as possible, then log y has to be big, right? It's like 3 steps in one. And if you do the inverse, that's also true. Like if yi is 0, then you can just like go and check this is the case. So that's why we are doing this. And there's a very nice I'll show you a pictorial representation of why we are doing this, right? So if you just like read this article, go here. First of all, this shows why we are not using that loss function here, right? So this is the error surface that you're getting. And then this one, the exact same thing that I was talking about, right? So if let's say we plot loss versus this probability, so h of x is essentially the y hats, right? So if on the x-axis you have the y hats, the predicted ones, and then here is the loss, then you can actually see what's happening to this minus log h of x, which is minus log y hat, and then minus log 1 minus y hat, right? So this is for like one of the classes, this is for the other class, right? So you're actually saying that you're getting really close to 1, right? When you're using this for like if y was 1, or you're saying you're getting really close to 0 if your like actual value was 0 with the predicted value. That's why we're using this like loss, right? Okay, so those are all like extra resources, but like the whole point that I'm trying to make here is that we cannot use the mean squared error. And so that's why we're using this like cross entropy error. Okay, and then of course the loss is going to be the sum of that. All right, again, a lot of information, but this makes our life easier because now I can solve for my optimal weights and bias, right? And how do we do that? Well, there is a very standard, well-known algorithm, the gradient descent, famous gradient descent, that we can use to get the optimal weights and bias. Okay, so how does that work? It's very simple. So it's an iterative algorithm, I would say, wherein what we are doing is, initially, I'll just like say, randomly select some weights and bias, right? And I'll start iterating over like my cost, right? And I'll try to come up with some weights and bias so that my cost is minimized because that's my goal, right? My optimization, the optimization problem that I'm trying to solve is minimize your cost, right? So one, like, of course, like mathematically speaking, what you have to do is initialize the values of the model parameters randomly and iteratively keep like getting new weights as you're moving towards like the minimum, right? So basically you're trying to find the gradient. So here it's shown, and let me talk through this as well. So usually like, because now we know that our error surface is going to be convex, right? And so let's say I begin with some random weights, which are going to be somewhere on this surface, right? And iteratively what I'm doing is I'm trying to find the gradient of these over this surface and continuously moving towards the next minimum, right? And this is the update rule here. So let's say I began with some W and B, right? And then I subtract this value from the existing weights. So what is this value? Well, there is this eta, which is like a learning parameter. That is some input that you're going to decide. Again, when we implement that, we'll understand what this is, right? And there is this B. This B is important because like theoretically speaking, what you do in gradient descent is that you pick one observation, calculate the gradient, right? And then update the weights, right? But then you can tell that for bigger data sets, that's going to be like big, that's going to take a lot of time, right? So what we do usually is we take batches, like mini batches or batches of your data, and then calculate the gradient and then update your weights and bias, right? So I have just included that already because I think when you implement your, like when the first time you're implementing gradient descent, you should do the batch version. And you should not like, sometimes it's also like it has different names, but basically you're picking certain batches and then updating your weights and bias, right? So you should use that because it's faster as compared to the original gradient descent. Okay. So the fundamental idea, just like try to understand the fundamental idea right now, which is I am randomly starting from some point on my error surface. I'm calculating the gradient, moving towards the negative of the gradient because that's going to take me towards the minimum, right? And then this eta is essentially deciding what is going to be my step size, right? So I'll be taking steps as I'm moving towards that minimum. So the value of my eta, which is sometimes also known as the hyperparameter, and I'm going to talk about that as well in later lectures, but a hyperparameter is something that you decide as somebody who's implementing this algorithm. So you're going to decide what value it takes. There are certain, like there are ways of getting the best values. There are certain best practices relating to that. But then of course we decide what is going to be eta and what is going to be b. And based on that, my algorithm will be like faster or slower, right? So we will be adjusting those. Regardless, just like focus on this part. So for every batch, I'm simply calculating the gradient and then moving towards the minimum until I reach the minimum. So now like one question arises, how do I know I reached the minimum? How long should I keep going? Should I be going forever? So obviously the answer is no, you cannot go forever. Usually we decide the number of iterations we want to take, right? So of course, like you can say that initially it's kind of a guessing thing that you just decided that, okay, let me run this for, let's say 100 iterations or 1000 iterations. But then depending on the problem domain, there are ways of figuring out how long you should be running your gradient descent to come to the best. Another way is like sometimes you run it for, let's say 10,000 times, and then next time you ran it for 20,000 times, you're able to figure that there isn't a lot of change that's happening. So let me just like maybe stop at 12,000, right? So those are some of the ways in which like you decide how many times you need to run. But regardless, gradient descent is something that's going to stay with us throughout our, like when we talk about deep neural networks, because this is the algorithm using which we will be determining parameters in neural networks. Okay. All right. So that's it. That's all I have for today's lecture, like in terms of the material that I wanted to cover. But I have additional readings which we can go over quickly. So these are two research papers, which I would ask everybody to go and at least take a look at. And these are important because your homework that's coming up next week is going to be like around implementing logistic regression. So I will ask you to go and pick a data set, pick a problem that logistic regression can solve, right? And this actually shows how logistic regression analysis should be done. So reading this, going through this, what all metrics, I think we have a good high level idea of like what we should be doing in logistic regression, right? It should be like a classification problem, first of all, and then you understand what the loss function is. Now you also understand how to get the minimum using gradient descent. So all of that will be there. But this is a good addition to your, like the things we discussed today, right? So this is the first paper. And then the second one also talks about logistic regression. Okay, this is what I hate about yes. Okay, so again, this is also talking about logistic regression analysis. And here they also talk about like how to divide your data set and like how to go from there. So those are the two papers that we'll be reading. And in addition to this, I'll have a discussion forum post related to this. And maybe on your homework, I might ask you something out of these two papers that you need to like write or like infer from these, right? So these are the two readings. But like as we proceed in the course, we'll have more readings to do because obviously you know that topics like artificial neural networks or topics like other convolution neural networks, recurrent neural networks have like really good literature out there, which I would like everybody to go over. So we will have more readings, but I just like wanted to give you an overview of this is how we will proceed in the semester. Okay, so that's that. And then in the next lecture, that's on Friday, as I said, I will be talking a little bit about the tools that are available to us. Of course, this is not going to be the case throughout the semester, so you will be going and checking these tools yourself. But as I said, I just wanted to go over a bit of like TensorFlow, how to do vectorization, how to do broadcasting, so that it makes your life easier rather than like using for loops and other things. Okay, so that's all I have for today's lecture. I just put this like extra resource. You can just skip it. There's no need to, because I'm going to talk about these things anyways. So that's that. Any questions before we end today's lecture? Yes. So what I'm doing is, that's a good question. I'm putting everything under my Git, this project. So you can go to that, like if you go on Submiti course home, you can go to this and I will be posting everything here. Yeah, but however, I'll be posting the homeworks and discussion forum post on Submiti, right? So I'm thinking you get that email, right? Everybody receives that email when I do an announcement. Okay, so I'm going to do that announcement and then you can start posting your responses for the discussion forum. That makes sense. Yes. Yes, that I'm going to post. So I'm going to share the link. Yeah, I will post it on my YouTube and I'll share the link on Submiti because like most people are not familiar with that. So I will just post it on Submiti. Yeah, so that's it from my end. Thank you. Thank you everyone for joining today and then see you on Friday. Yes. Yeah, go ahead. This is 4. This is 4.
It's not like variable.
No, this is 4.
Okay, I just want.
Yeah, and that's like one quick thing before we end. So some of you are taking it for 6,000 levels, some of you are taking it for 4,000. So the only difference, and because I've had that question before, the only difference is that in some of the assignments, the 6,000 level will have like an extra thing to do as compared to the 4,000. That's all. Otherwise, the lecture and everything stays the same.
Do you think I'm going to sign up? I will send you an email asking for access to Submiti.
If you're not signed up, I cannot give you access to somebody.
Why?
You're going to register
Yeah,
with?
but it's
Yes,
like
yes,
some-
yes. Yes. So just like send me an email. I can manually add you. Yeah. Thank you. Yes. Oh, so you want my email?
Yeah, I think I just sent.
You send me an email? Okay, so I'm gonna add you. Yeah, I'm gonna add you. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Hi.
I'm sure that I know, just confused. Kind of the same thing that we were talking about, except the only difference is
The
like
percent-
loss function
Yes.
and iterative stuff.
Perceptron is actually the basic idea of perceptron comes from logistic regression. Yeah. Yeah.
Similar.
Yeah, it is.
Those
This is
kinds
the
of
thing,
things,
actually.
but the loss function.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
The only difference though is going to be when we utilize that and put it together in a neural network. So,
Okay.
yeah, but the basic idea is the same. It comes from logistic.
The function.
Yeah.
Okay. Logistic regression.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hi.
You got it.
Sorry, I cannot hear you.
You got people on it, the word start then.
Yes.
You do?
Yes.
So they get access to Submiti.
I think they should. Are you planning to audit?
My semester schedules are tight.
No, that's fine. I mean, I'm
I'm
not.
not decided yet. I like to take the course.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I'm able to meet all the deadlines.
Yeah, I know, I understand that, and especially because you're a PhD student. How about, I think there is a form that you need to get from the registrar. Just send me that. If they don't like create any, like letting you audit.
No, I understand everything is in the GitHub and the public report.
Yes.
What about the assignments? I think that would be really helpful to actually.
Yeah, that's the only thing that you can do.
And that I guess you would only upload in
On Submiti.
on Submit.
Yeah. So one way out could be, I think if you audit, you get access to Submiti.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you send me that,
If I choose to audit.
Yeah. I think you get access to Submiti.